You know, some people walk into our lives not to love us, but to slowly dismantle us, piece by piece, day by day. They take away our trust, our kindness, even our self-respect, without ever feeling like they've done anything wrong, because to them, consequences are always someone else's problem. They live as if they're immune to truth, to accountability, to basic decency. For a long time, I believed they would change, that if I were just a little more patient, a little more kind, maybe one day they'd be grateful and finally turn around. But no, the only thing your kindness ever teaches a narcissist is that you can endure more until you don't, until the day you rise, not by yelling, not by crying, not by explaining, but simply by walking away from the toxic cycle. That's when everything starts to fall apart. But not for you, for them. For the first time, they feel the icy sting of isolation. For the first time, there's no one left to manipulate, no one to blame, no one to pull back into their chaos. But they panic, not because they love you, but because they've lost their supply, the one who used to tolerate everything they did. In today's video, I want to share with you a story that's deeply personal, deeply real, not just mine, but one that reflects what many have lived through in the shadows of a narcissist and somehow found a way out. If you're on that journey of reclaiming your voice, your worth, and most importantly, yourself, then stay with me until the end of this video. Because sometimes the thing that hurts a narcissist the most isn't what you say, it's the awakened silence you leave behind. Some people go through their entire lives under the illusion that they'll never have to face the consequences of their actions. They grow used to controlling, manipulating, and hurting others without giving it a second thought. They walk into your life, take your trust, your kindness, your peace, and still believe they've done nothing wrong. As long as they're not the ones getting hurt, nothing else seems to matter. That's how narcissists often operate. They live as if the entire world revolves around their ego. They don't develop empathy. They never pause to ask, am I hurting someone by doing this? They care only about preserving their supply, whether that's you, a partner, or a family member. Someone who forgives, endures, and stays silent for far too long. Until one day, that silence changes. It's no longer the silence of submission or fear. It's the silence of someone who has finally had enough. No more reactions, no more tears, no more trying to fix or rescue. Just release. A simple no. A clear and steady look. A quiet but powerful step back. Enough to shake the narcissist's entire world. For the first time, they face true rejection. No one left to control. No one left to blame. No one left to act as a mirror for their empty sense of self. And that's when everything begins to unravel. When a narcissist loses their power, they often become more dangerous than ever. They may explode in rage, beg for attention, use fake tears, sweet promises, or even threats. But if you remain calm, if you stay rooted in your clarity and refuse to react or compromise, they begin to fall apart because there's nothing inside them solid enough to stand on. Their entire identity is a mask built out of other people's reactions. So when no one responds anymore, the mask falls, and behind it is emptiness, chaos, collapse. Some narcissists, after losing their main source of supply, maybe a close family member, a spouse, or even a sibling, completely lose their sense of direction because all along they were copying, mimicking, and stealing energy and identity from that person. When that person leaves, it's like they lose their very sense of self. They spiral, they fall into depression, and they're forced to confront something they've never prepared for, themselves. That is the real consequence, not the punishment you give, not the harsh words you say, but the fact that you are simply no longer there, no longer available, no longer standing in the role they assigned you, no longer playing their game. That's why you don't need to do anything dramatic to make a narcissist wake up. Sometimes your silence is the most painful awakening they'll ever experience, not because they loved you, but because they lost the mirror that once reflected their false self back to them. The sad truth is, when faced with consequences for the first time, most narcissists don't truly learn anything. They don't change because they realize they were wrong. They change, or more accurately, they pretend to change just to regain control. They may suddenly appear more reasonable. They apologize, even cry, claim they're in pain, that they've awakened, that they can't live without you. They use exactly the words you once longed to hear from them, but this time, they're not coming from the heart. They're coming from the fear of losing power, because what they truly fear is not losing you, it's losing the ability to control you. They're not afraid of being alone. They're afraid of not having anyone left to feed their inflated ego. No one left to blame, manipulate, or drag into their never-ending emotional warfare. And have you noticed, when you stop reacting, they panic? Not because you're silent, but because in your silence, they can't predict your next move. And to a narcissist, not being able to predict you means not being able to control you. And that is their greatest nightmare. They're used to living in a world where everyone plays along with their script. A script where they're the victim, the hero, the center of attention. But when you stop playing your assigned role, the entire stage collapses. For the first time, they are left alone with their real self. No audience, no reactions, no one to back them up. Their reality is something they simply cannot tolerate. So don't let their new persona fool you. Their remorse, their regret, their sudden need for you might just be a new mask. One that's more polished, softer, more convincing, but just as dangerous. Because this time, if you return, they won't control you the same way. They'll do it more subtly, more quietly, and with even deeper damage. And eventually you'll find yourself asking, did I imagine their change? But the answer is no, they didn't change. They just changed their strategy. And it is in that very moment where you stand at the edge between hope and awakening that you're faced with the most important decision of all, to return to the same old cycle or to step out of it for good. Because here's the truth. No one who has truly awakened can ever go back. Once you've seen the truth, going back is like choosing to close your eyes deliberately, and this is what makes you uncontrollable in the eyes of a narcissist. You no longer react the same way. You don't get angry. You don't play by their rules anymore. You're silent, not out of fear, but because you've become crystal clear. And that is the one antidote a narcissist can never disarm: your clarity and your silence. They can fight accusations. They can twist the truth. They can try to drag you back into an endless cycle of blame and manipulation. But they cannot win when you stop playing. And do you know what they'll do then? They'll try everything to make you react. They'll try to appear more pitiful or more kind. They'll try to convince you that things are changing, that this time is real. But in reality, the only thing that's changed is the way they've upgraded their mask. They don't come back because they love you. They come back because you were the only mirror that reflected back a sense of power to them. And when you cut off that reflection, they no longer know who they are. To a narcissist, their very existence depends on someone reacting to them, someone suffering for them, someone still holding on. When that's gone, they don't just lose you, they lose the false self they were clinging to. And here's what you need to remember most. If you go back, you're not going back to love. You're going back to an outdated version of yourself, the one who doubted her intuition, feared her emotions, and couldn't trust her own boundaries. And then you'll start to slowly fall apart, bit by bit. Not because they're hurting you, but because you're losing yourself. Because leaving isn't the end. It's a rebirth. A kind of rebirth that isn't loud or explosive, but so profound that you are never the same person again. Escaping a narcissist isn't like walking out of a locked room. It's like unlocking your own handcuffs, opening the prison door and stepping out, even if your legs are still shaking, even if your heart still hurts. But step by step, you start to remember who you are. And one day, maybe while you're standing in front of a mirror, or when you say no without needing to explain yourself, do you realize you no longer belong there? You no longer need to be understood, accepted, or pitied. You start to feel peace and clarity. You start to see beauty in solitude. And strangely enough, It's in that solitude that you begin to hear your true voice again, the one that had been silenced for so long. You no longer need to scream to defend yourself. You just stand firm. You no longer try to fix anyone. You stop trying to heal someone who doesn't want to heal. You stop returning to a wound just because it once felt like home. And you'll notice the anger quiets, the sadness fades, the self-doubt disappears, because you no longer need them to feel worthy. Truthfully, healing doesn't begin the moment you walk away. It begins the moment you stop going back, when you stop checking your messages, when you stop hoping they'll be different, when you let go of all the what-ifs, the maybe one days, the could it be possibles, and simply accept, I deserve peace more than I deserve confusion. When you do that, when you choose yourself not out of rage but out of kindness and clarity, you're not just leaving a person, you're returning to yourself, to a self no longer programmed by manipulation, no longer chasing love, no longer trading away boundaries just to keep a relationship alive. You're no longer the one who cried silently from being dismissed. You're the one walking forward now, with a heart that's still whole, scarred, but healed in the truest way. You're no longer the person who once cried silently from being dismissed. You're the person now walking forward with a heart still whole, scarred, but healed in the truest way. And it's at this point, the intersection between past and present, between old pain and new peace, that you begin to realize something profound. You've truly made it through, not because you've forgotten them, not because you never loved them, but because you've stopped compromising with yourself, just to hold on to a love that was never right, and that is the clearest sign of emotional maturity. You know you've truly moved on when you look back at old memories and no longer feel the urge to return. You hear their name or see traces of them somewhere, and your heart no longer flinches. You recognize that some people come into your life not to stay, but to teach you how to leave. Growth doesn't always come from gaining more. It often comes from letting go of the illusion that they'll change, letting go of the hope that if you just tried a little harder, they'd finally see your worth, letting go of the responsibilities that were never yours, like healing someone who doesn't want to heal. And strangely enough, when you let go, you feel lighter. You begin to enjoy the silence. No more message notifications that make your heart skip. No more weighing every word, afraid you might accidentally upset them. No more constantly explaining yourself to someone who never truly listened. Now you can breathe. Breathe with both lungs. Breathe with a peace that no one can trespass. You have time again to care for yourself, not to become better for someone else's approval, but simply to return to yourself. You begin reconnecting with the parts of you that had been forgotten. You remember that you used to enjoy reading in the mornings, that you had little passions, cooking, writing, planting, or just walking in the rain, that you used to laugh without holding back, that your eyes used to shine and your soul used to feel light. And now no one dims that anymore, because now you no longer hand over the control of your emotions to someone else. You've learnt peace doesn't come from someone changing. It comes from your decision to walk away before you lose yourself. Of course, there will still be days when old memories surface. There will be moments when your heart feels weak and you wonder, do they ever think about me? But you'll learn to let that question pass without needing an answer, because not every question deserves a reply, and not every loss needs to be healed by going back. Some wounds, they heal the moment you stop touching them, and then something beautiful begins to happen. You start rebuilding boundaries, not to punish, but to protect. You no longer feel guilty for saying no. You no longer feel like a bad person for choosing yourself. You no longer rush to reply to messages. You no longer let your heart be dragged around by sweet words that lack sincerity. You don't close your heart, you just open it more wisely. And this time you're clear enough to recognize who's worthy of stepping in. True freedom isn't when you escape someone. It's when you no longer want to go back. You no longer crave validation from someone who once belittled you. You no longer hope they pay so you can feel satisfied. You no longer need them to admit they were wrong in order for you to feel right. You only need one thing, inner peace. And now, you have it. And if someone asks you, how did you get through it all? Just smile and say, I stopped fighting with them. I just stopped fighting with myself. Some goodbyes come without tears, without final words, only silence, and a heart too tired to say anything more. But you know what? It's these quiet exits that often mark the biggest turning points in our lives. Leaving a narcissist isn't like walking away from an ordinary relationship. It's like slowly pulling your energy back from a place that has drained you dry. It's a quiet revolution to reclaim yourself, piece by piece, cell by cell. You don't just walk away from a person. You walk away from the weakest version of yourself. The version that swallowed every frustration, bent every boundary, silently endured in the hope of keeping something that was never truly yours. And the truth is, no one walks away from a narcissist and stays the same. You change, sometimes through pain, but eventually you'll realize that pain became the catalyst for your deepest rebirth. Because once you start loving yourself again, everything begins to shift. You stop reacting from trauma. You start responding from clarity. You stop chasing validation. You begin to build an inner strength so rooted that you know your worth, even if no one else sees it. You wake up each morning and your mind feels lighter. You're no longer afraid to check your phone. You no longer need someone's green light to feel lovable. Because now, you are your own source of light. You begin reconnecting with the forgotten parts of yourself. You remember that you used to love reading in the morning. You had a quiet little hobby, maybe cooking, writing, gardening, or just walking in the rain. You used to laugh with ease. Your eyes used to shine. Your soul used to feel light. And now, no one is dimming that anymore. Because you've stopped handing over the remote control of your emotions to someone else. You now understand. Peace doesn't come when someone changes. It comes when you walk away before you lose yourself. Of course, there will still be days when the old memories return. You'll recall those early moments, their sweetness, their promises, the illusion that this love was fate. But now, you're awake enough to know that was bait, a chapter in the manipulation cycle, not true love. You begin to understand that real love doesn't sweep you off your feet in confusion. It makes you feel safe. Real love doesn't make you anxious in silence. It doesn't make you prepare a defense for every conversation. It doesn't keep you on emotional edge, worried when the next explosion will come. You've lived through that, and if you're still somewhere along that recovery path, please know this, you are not alone. So many people have believed in a version of they'll change, only to realize the only person who needed to change was themselves. Not to fix someone else, but to fix the belief that they ever had to earn love through pain. And little by little, you begin to learn how to trust your intuition again. Say no without guilt. Recognize who is not deserving of your energy. Walk away from a room, a call, a relationship. The moment your inner peace starts to shrink, that's not selfishness. That's emotional intelligence. That's knowing that no one, not even someone you once loved, has the right to violate your peace. And you know what? By walking away quietly, but with courage, you taught the narcissist a lesson they were never forced to learn. No one is permanent. No one stays under control forever. Not because you hated them, but because you loved yourself enough not to stay in that loop any longer. Maybe they'll never understand that. Maybe they'll say you're cold or too harsh, but you don't need their understanding, because this time you understand yourself. And if you're watching this right now, sitting somewhere in the middle of your healing journey, maybe you're still unsure. Did I really do the right thing? Was I too harsh? How do I know I'm truly healing? The answer isn't in anyone else's advice. It's in that feeling of calm you now get from not constantly living in emotional chaos. It's in the deep exhale you take when you finally stop carrying what was never yours. That's how you know, from now on, I choose who gets to enter my peace. And if you're still walking, no matter how slowly, that alone is something extraordinary. You don't need to be perfect to be lovable. You only need to be honest with yourself, and those who truly love you will never ask you to pretend. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If anything in this message resonated with you, helped you feel seen or reminded you of your worth, Don't forget to click subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us on this healing journey. And if you'd like to share your own story, or just drop a sign that you're here, alive and healing, leave a comment below, because you're not alone. This community, all of us, is a place where hearts once broken are learning to beat again, strong and steady. I'll see you in the next video. And always remember, you deserve peace without conditions. You deserve to be loved, not for your pain, but for your presence. Just as you are, whole, worthy, and needing no further proof.